Hey there, today I want to talk about some of the simplest way for you to reduce your cost per click, because that's one of the biggest topics when it comes to business owners wanting to fine-tune their marketing. Obviously, no one wants to pay more than they have to for their advertising. So I think what's important is to have a look at the actual cost per click and what makes it up. So if you find the actual official Google page, it talks about the fact that when it comes to cost per click, it is really defined by click-through rate, ad relevance, and landing page experience. Now, every time you search for something, there's an auction that defines the cost of a particular keyword. That's why the whole thing varies. Now, the landing page experience is very much dependent on the speed, and a lot of people, for some reason, forget that. Now, while you can certainly spend, $10 or $15 on your hosting, that is probably the biggest waster when it comes to your advertising budget. So, for example, if we do a search for Dentist Brisbane, obviously this particular website comes up. So, if we look at the site, I've clicked on it before, so obviously it loads up fairly quickly. But there's two tools I specifically want to have a look at. The first tool is called Page Speed Insights by Google. So if you put in the URL and hit analyze, they'll basically go through a bit of a process. And the other tool I'll fire that simultaneously is called GTmetrix.com, which is a free tool. But I definitely advise you to set up for an account, which is also free, by the way, which will allow you to have a few extra things like the location that you're testing from as well. So I want to make sure that we test from the closest location possible. In our case, it's Sydney, Australia. So we're going to hit analyze here as well. So those two tools are firing along to see exactly how fast it takes to load this website, and it also looks at it from a mobile perspective as well, which is, majority of the visitors these days, especially for dental practices. So if we look at the page speed insights, we've got given a score of 57, which is somewhere in the middle, probably not too bad, but could be improved. It says that the content takes a while to load. Overall, it takes 6 seconds. And the first bit of content takes 3.5 seconds as well. So it goes into greater detail about the things that you can do, like reducing your CSS and JavaScript. And this is probably good and useful information specifically for your web developers. But then it basically talks about images and some things that you could resize yourself. So overall, it's quite a basic analysis, but overall it gives you a good idea. Most importantly, it actually renders your website on the mobile, and it shows you what it looks like. Now, from here, you can certainly see that there's probably a few improvements that could be done when someone looks at this specifically. There's no offers, there's no call to actions that are sort of standing out. If anything, there's call, book online, and a map. So, I mean, it works to a degree, but there's probably a lot of improvements that could be done. What's the new patient offer? Is there operating hours or something like that? So you really want people to find that information straight away, as opposed to having to click multiple times. Now let's have a look at the GTmetrix report, which is typically a lot more in depth. Now this particular report uses a number of tools, including the page speed insights, but basically presents it in a different light. So it says that the overall score that we got is D. It's mainly due to performance, and there's some structural changes that could be done. Now, if you look at this more specifically, it gives you some tips, and if you click on the waterfall feature, it basically shows you exactly where the issues are. Now, you may test this a number of times and get slightly different metrics, but basically the first row here is how long it takes for the server to respond. And that's probably the easiest thing to look at straight away, because at the end of the day, if your server is slow, that's the easiest fix for you. So you could easily migrate it to a faster host. And there's a couple of companies that we work with and can certainly recommend. But at the end of the day, if you're spending $10 or $15 a month on hosting, that could be the biggest problem, because every single time an object is being loaded through your website, it takes more and more time. So if that host isn't optimized, that is an issue. If you've got a lot of plugins on your website, that is an issue. But most importantly, if you really want to sort of crank things up when it comes to your advertising, I would suggest looking into getting a landing page as opposed to running your entire website, because essentially this business here sends the entire traffic from their paid campaign to their homepage. Now, is that a good experience? I mean, if someone looks for a dentist in Brisbane, does this really suit the purpose? I mean, if you're in Brisbane, you know where Alderley is most of the time, I assume. But for someone who's not familiar with it, it's on the north side of Brisbane. And I guess if someone's searching for Woolloongabba, which is where I am based right now on the south side, it's a fair bit of travel. There's obviously a lot more practices that are nearby. So is this a good experience overall? I don't know. Is there something that's really going to grab my attention from the ad copy and from the offer? Well, there's really nothing that stands out specifically for me. You can target people quite specifically by a number of different factors, but overall, this is a very general page that basically presents all the information. And I guess, knowing the dental industry a little bit more specifically, given the fact that we work with quite a few, things like private insurance, the big selling points, specifically when someone actually chooses a company. And then from there, you basically want to be able to contact the company and speak to them. So the phone number is great because majority of inquiries are coming through the phone number. People will book online if they basically have dealt with the business before, or they could potentially be millennials, that people prefer to sort of work like that. But there's nothing with social media that would allow them to interact. Now, we find that having a Facebook chat messenger box or a live chat of some kind seems to be getting more and more popular. So, this is just a few tips in terms of where you could improve your overall campaign experience and potentially cut down your costs by things like landing pages, and probably the simplest thing to do is just assessing your hosting and moving to a faster platform. I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, please comment below or email us through directly.